No one has a monopoly on the truth. Our version of our own truths are based on our own lived experiences. In this space, we welcome different perspectives to learn, unlearn, and enlighten. Welcome to The Lantern.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Lantern Podcast. On today's podcast, I'm so excited to be joined by Lauren Parker, who is the founder of Ellie Sport, which is a apparel golfing range for women. Ellie is so prepared and organized for this podcast. If you look behind her, she has her apparel right there. I love that she, has taken the time to set out some of her amazing garments. And I'm sure throughout the podcast, she'll probably show us a few pieces if we're lucky. I'm going to let Lauren introduce herself to us and explain a bit more about her journey.
Hi, Khanyi.
So, Lauren, tell us a bit more about yourself, your background, and how you actually founded this amazing apparel range.
So I started Ellie Sport about 2 years ago, and I kind of wanted to create a sportswear brand that really empowered women to get out there and try new sports and, really just do things that sometimes we're not that confident doing. So renting a pair of clubs and trying golf, even though you're a bit nervous to, and playing paddle and just, getting out there. And I wanted women to feel confident and empowered and a little bit sexy while doing so. And I just feel like the men have so many brands and amazing options out there. And I wanted to kind of create something for the girlies too.
I love that. I do want to delve a little deeper in why do you think it was particularly important for you to actually develop a range specifically for women and specifically around the sport of golf?
So I kind of wanted to do a golf, not only golf, but anything on a course or a court. So tennis, paddle, squash, hockey, golf. It wasn't only just golf. So I feel like a lot of women can sometimes feel a bit embarrassed and scared to try something new, and especially with golf, it's like a very male dominated sport and there aren't that women that, casually play. So I wanted to kind of, create a brand that was more than just selling clothing, but also selling a feeling of like, getting the confidence and let's go out and play, even though we might not be that good. And I mean, I've played sport my whole life. I've never been an incredibly talented sportswoman, but I love it. And I want other women to feel confident to go out there and try it as well.
So why do you think for you diversity in sport is something that's important to you?
I just think we all should be able to enjoy it. Like, I think it doesn't matter who you are. I just think you should be able to, it's so good to just go out and play with your friends and have fun and laugh and get those endorphins flowing, running around after a ball, or, it's fun and it kind of brings you back to your inner child, and, you can release a lot of stress and it helps you clear your mind.
I love that you mention all of that because, part of our mental health and well-being advocacy is around, physical activity that not only helps you with your managing your mental health, your physical health, but also some of that community. So I do love that you are building something that women can feel included in, because I do agree with you. There are some sports that are perceived to be male-only sports. Like, I don't know if the audience listening knows that yoga in its origins was actually perceived to be a male practice. Krishna and Patanjali were the first male, students that actually practiced under the main person who founded yoga. And then there was a female yogi that the instructor actually took on board. I forgot her name now. And it was only through them including her that then women actually got to enjoy yoga, which when you're saying what you're saying about something like golf or paddle or tennis or any sport that women feel is not for them, it's surprising to me that, I mean, yoga was founded a very long time ago. And the fact that there was also that same division as to what women and men can do, it's mind blowing to me.
Yeah. And also just one thing, I do a unisex range as well. You know, should also be including us on their four walls and on your paddle booking. And, we can do it together. It doesn't have to be only boys, only girls. Like, it can be like include each other. Let's go do a four wall with two guys, two girls. And, it's nice to include everyone and it's fun.
I absolutely agree with you. And I find that in the yoga space, you'll have a female instructor instructing a female class and then a male instructor instructing a male class. There's very few times I feel that a male would want a female yoga instructor, which I don't understand why it is that way. I haven't had a male on the podcast to ask the question to, but it's interesting that, in all these spaces, I find, as I always like to lean on Brene Brown's work sometimes, she always says that if you look for evidence that you don't belong, you'll find it. So I think
Yes.
in looking at some of these things, if you just see men only doing yoga or women only doing a particular activity, you may assume it's not for you. So your work and what you're doing is so important in just breaking down that barrier. It actually does a lot for society and our mindsets as well, and our perception. I do want to ask you about the name of your brand, because I understand that it was founded in memory of your grandmother. So talk to us more about her.
So I started Ellie Sport when my gran had just passed away. She passed away from COVID, and it was a really tough time. I was also working in corporate at the time and had gotten Bell's palsy from stress, which is basically facial paralysis. And then a week later, my gran passed away, and I went home for 2 weeks. And obviously, with COVID, funerals kept getting pushed out, and there was just, a lot of turbulence around that. And later in the year, I had inherited my grand's golf clubs, and I'd always wanted to play with her. And every time I'd gone home from university, I'd always say, Gran, let's please play. And I would love to, just play around with you. And I never got that opportunity. And, it made me really, really sad. So the one day I just took the golf clubs. I was going to go to the driving range. I kind of, looking for an outfit that would be cute and I would feel confident there, because I didn't really know that many people that were playing golf or that I could go and play with. And just shopping around, I couldn't really find anything super, really caught my attention. And I'd managed to buy one dress, but it was so expensive. And I just, I didn't really love it. But anyway, I went and played and I absolutely loved it. And my gran was such an outdoorsy person. She loved all sport. She was just always out and about.
Okay. It's okay.
Yeah. She was just such a regal woman, and I wanted to create something that, had her behind it. And she was at every hockey match, and I used to do swimming when I was little, and she used to love that I was a swimmer and a dancer, and she was always just so supportive of even my sister in sport. Yeah.
I love that. And I'm sorry to hear about her passing, but she sounds like she was an amazing woman. We share in common, being close to our grands. I'm also close to my grand, and I don't want to get into talking about her because I'll also get emotional. I also understand, I do, the strong, having a strong figure it really does a lot for you as a person. So I can definitely understand why you're emotional. I did want to ask you, what do you think are the characteristics that your gran embodied that you are hoping to cultivate within yourself and translate that in your business?
She was a very independent, strong woman. She got divorced at a very well after she had like she always had time with the girls, and she played bridge once a week, golf once a week. She had an amazing routine, and I kind of just she was a very proud woman, and she was very independent and very, I'm trying to figure out the word, but just trying to think of the word. But yeah, just very strong and yeah.
Earlier on, you mentioned that you didn't have time to play golf with your grand because you were busy pursuing your academic studies.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a bit more to the audience about maybe how we all lack some study life balance or work life balance, and how we'll sort of compromise spending time with family and how that might impact us later down the line?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I went to Stellenbosch for my undergrad and I was doing investment management. And then I moved to UCT for honors to do my honors in financial markets. I wasn't doing, I think, what I loved. And I just kind of, went through varsity doing, I'll manage my own money one day. So I might as well learn these skills now. And, you kind of get very involved in where you are at varsity. I mean, you think that your whole bubble just becomes your university life. And, sometimes you forget to phone home and, just are in such a bubble. So, I mean, work life balance, I find is much easier to, manage, whereas varsity life can just be a bit all consuming and, just living in your little bubble. And
Yeah.
you don't realize that there's the big world outside of it.
Yeah, I find it interesting that you mentioned that, because I think in as much as you are surrounded by a lot of people all the time, is still a experience that you're experiencing in isolation to the broader context of the world. So I think for a lot of people, when you step out of university and then you're now confronted with, this whole world that you may not necessarily have to have considered, right? I think that can be a little challenging. So do you want to speak to how your transition was going from your academic sort of university life to corporate?
So I was super excited to start working. I think I was one of the only ones of my friends, but I was done with university. I was so excited to start working and just, stand on my own 2 feet and earn money. And, I was very, very excited for that phase. And I think I was like really craving that routine of, having to be somewhere at 7, 8 o'clock on a weekday morning and you leave at 5, 6 in the evening. And yeah, I mean, when I first started working, I absolutely loved it. I loved having the routine. I loved, learning and just, being a working girly. And I'd always dreamed of being in corporate and I wanted to be that go-getter. One day I was going to be the CEO and yeah.
Okay, so I have a follow-up question to ask from that one, but I do want to ask about your rationale, reasoning behind your academic qualification. Why did you study your degrees in financial management?
So I started in just a BCom general and really enjoyed statistics and then investments after that. And I kind of just switched to that route. And I mean, I was enjoying it, but I wouldn't say it set my soul alight and what I really saw myself doing
Yeah.
long term. But I mean, I always wanted to be able to manage my own money one day and be able to invest my own, and look after my own finances and be responsible.
Okay, it's interesting. Would you say that did you have family consultations around what you would study and the reasoning behind it, or was it something that you were inclined towards?
Sorry, I didn't hear that question.
I was asking, did you sort of have family support in your decision making as to what you would study, or was that just from your own internal drive to want to actually understand money and finances?
So it was kind of my own internal drive. My parents didn't really know what I was doing. I would kind of just tell them I'm switching degrees to this, and I'm no longer studying just a general. I'm now switching to investments, and they kind of trusted me to make my own decisions, and yeah.
I think for a lot of people who may listen to this podcast, their, academic pursuits are sort of guided, some people dictated by their parents. So I
Yeah.
was interested to understand whether that was the case for you or whether it was something where you had your own autonomy over. So the follow-up question that I had when you were talking about your transition and you founding your sports range is around your experience in corporate and what made you transition. I know you had spoken about your health condition, which I was shocked to hear about. Do you want to get a bit more into the circumstances leading up to that and what finally made you decide to stand on business?
I noticed my mental health was starting to decline after I was starting to have multiple panic attacks where I thought I was dying. I thought there was something severely wrong with me, and it started getting progressively worse. And I was starting to have like 3, 4, 5 panic attacks a day for a number of hours, and it started to affect my ability to work. I wasn't able to be in meetings for an extensive period of time. I was struggling to get my work done just because I was having these severe panic attacks and I couldn't sit down and focus. And I think that's when I ultimately decided to take time off, because I was having to commute through to Pretoria and I couldn't get in my car and drive. I think cars were one of my big triggers, where I would get in the car and within driving for 5 minutes, I was having a full-blown panic attack. So then I took time off, and I was taking some time off to kind of focus on my mental health, try and get better, going to therapy. And I decided that I maybe want to start a sportswear brand. So yeah, I mean, should
Yeah, I
have
mean,
really, you take time off and then you decide to start a full new adventure.
no, I mean, I think the context is what's key because it's more so a empowering decision versus, staying in a situation that may not necessarily be the best for you.
Yes.
So do you want to talk a bit more about your feeling? I don't want to say as in like not being able to hack it, because I don't like when people
Yeah.
say things like that, because I will still ask the question, what is there to hack? But for people that let's say for people who are in your position, they've sacrificed their time, they went to university, they studied, they came to corporate, and within the first, in early career, they realized this is not what I thought it would be. What's your advice to them? Because you've obviously made a very brave decision in putting yourself first. So what would you advise them?
So look, I was very, very disappointed in myself when I had to take a step away from corporate, and I have processed a lot of it, but there's still times where I'm like a little bit sad that I feel like I didn't make it in corporate and it was my big dream. And obviously I am so chuffed to have started Ellie Sport, and it has been my dream and I'm finally doing it. But there is always that thing that, I didn't quite crack corporate. So, I mean, my advice would just be to follow your heart. I know that sounds cliche and whatever, but I believe that you do what you love and the money will come. And you've just got to work your ass off to try and, get it going. And yeah, I'm very lucky that I have such a supportive family and friends that have been rooting for me this whole time, which obviously they hold me accountable and they, push me, and which is awesome. But I would say follow your heart, follow your gut. If something's not serving you or it's really starting to affect your mental health, put yourself first, because at the end of the day, you are your biggest asset.
And I, as someone who did more years in corporate, I would still say I think there's no medal in how long you've done it, and it's just this societal perception that we've built, unfortunately, and we hold each other to the standard of you need to do it for this amount of time and people will think you didn't put the work in, or, but who made those rules? To be very honest with you, I still ask myself that question as to who decides what's your timeline, right? Because we all have different paths, but obviously because we're in one environment, uni, we all sort of conditioned in the same way. We all sort of have a mindset of after we're done studying, we're all going to go to work. So when that doesn't necessarily work out, or you're the first one to step out and do something different, of course it looks odd,
Yeah.
but I think it looks odd to people now in your case, but I think it will make sense later. I just genuinely believe in seeing the effort that you've put into what you've put into. Your path is just different. And how amazing that your path is different. Maybe you don't need to be within that environment to learn what you're learning, because you said you wanted to learn how to manage your own money. And you and I both know in business, you're constantly doing that.
Constantly doing that.
Let's talk more about Ellie Sport and tell me what sets Ellie Sport apart from any other sports brand. I mean, I'm not familiar with other sports brands other than obviously the traditional mainstream ones, but I think those would be classified as fast fashion and Ellie Sports not. So please take us through what makes it niche.
So obviously focusing on women and women in sport, we predominantly manufacture women's sporting, such as dresses and skirts and bodysuits. And you can see I'm kind of got the bodysuit on now under a blazer.
Nice.
And we are manufactured in South Africa locally. Want to support small businesses in South Africa, small CMTs, suppliers, all of that kind of thing. And yeah, I think that the community is really what sets us apart, and getting women to play sport and getting out on a course or a court, even if you're not the best. I mean, I've been told by multiple people that you should sponsor a pro, or that would be amazing. But I want to, what about the rest of the girls, that aren't professional, aren't that good, but that just want to go and have fun? So I think that's where my community is just getting everyone out there. It doesn't matter if you're the best or.
I love what you said about everybody playing, because I will say that one thing I love about yoga practice and using props is that it's very inclusive. Yoga is actually, there are some people who are super competitive, where they
Yes.
will do certain postures and then deem you not worthy to be in the class because you can't move at a certain pace, you can't do certain things. So it becomes this exclusionary practice. So you have instructors, luckily, who are dedicated to providing props and modified poses so that everybody can practice, because it's an acknowledgement that my practice doesn't have to look like your practice, but that doesn't mean I have a bad yoga practice. It just means that our body composition is different. And I mean, some poses genetically, some people will never be able to do that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they shouldn't be practicing. So I can definitely relate with what you're saying when it comes to any sport that, of course you could sponsor pro, but no, you don't want to create the impression that you need to only be a pro player to enjoy. People are so stressed on a daily basis. I've seen the paddle community grow in South Africa, and I've loved seeing that, right? It's a space for community. It's something that we do. In my time, it was the outdoor soccer discovery that we used to do. And I used to love that. I love that it's an inclusive. I think that this inclusivity and community is what we need to move the needle when it comes to that collective global mental health and well-being.
And it's such a healthy way to, spend a social evening and to make friends and to laugh and get out there and do something different. Eating and drinking and, alcohol. It's a fun way to get endorphins and run around. And I was going to say, back to the yoga thing. I mean, I love yoga, but I am really not that flexible. I can barely touch my knees. And, I've been to yoga classes with guy friends, and they are way more flexible than I am. And, it's fun. I love it, though. It puts me in such a great mental space and helps me calm my thoughts and when I'm feeling anxious. And it's amazing.
I love that you enjoy the practice, and hopefully one day you get past the knees. which I'm sure you will with practice. So what self-care practices do you practice? Because you've mentioned yoga now, and I mean, with somebody who obviously you have your apparel range, I'm sure you lean into all the sports that you're playing, but what is it that you actually enjoy doing most in your rest and relaxation time when you're not focusing on your business?
So I love spending time with my friends and my family. I mean, I go home to the Eastern Cape often. My parents are based on Port Elizabeth, and that's just always my safe, happy place. And I always get to go back to being grounded and calm and, love being outdoors there. I have started making like a weekly or bi-weekly golf Friday kind of a thing for me just to get out and, spend some time on the range and just calm the thoughts and be out in nature. Walking. Never really been a huge gym person, but I do try and get to the gym. But yeah, just friends and family to ground me and, doing fun, adventurous things. Paddle once a week, running around.
I love that. So I was going to ask you about your clothing range and what are some of the events that you're putting on? Where can people expect to find you? What are some of the exciting things that your sports range is involved in at the moment?
So we've been doing multiple kind of pop-up events recently. I've just been trying to get everyone to the product because we are predominantly online at www.elisport.com. And, it's just being an online business, people don't often get to see the actual clothing. So we've been doing pop-ups in St. Francis at the Saturday market. And that's been really, really fun. And I've done 2 pop-ups in Joburg. I did one at the Socially Gathering event, which is a women's network in Cape Town and Joburg. And I hosted a pop-up event on Saturday. Yeah,
And how
just
did
to
that
kind of,
go?
oh, it went really well. Invited friends and posted on Instagram and had lots of people pull through, and we had mimosas and some treats, and yeah, everyone just got to feel the product, touch it, try it on, see what they liked. And yeah, it was nice to get feedback from everyone as well.
I love the fact that you have an online store. I do think that having a physical store in this day and age is quite overrated and probably not worth the overhead.
Yes.
My studio also is just online because I could not be bothered to take on the overheads right now. And also doing more of a pop-up, like pop-up retreats, pop-up wellness days. Because I just think also it connects you to more people when you don't have just one physical location. I find that for me, that's something that seems very restrictive because then you're
Yeah.
bound by locality. You can't just, take your little pop-up and go and pop up wherever you want to. So I love that you have your pop-up. But do take us through a day in the life of what you get up to as the founder of an apparel line. What are the hardest parts of the job? Because I mean, some people might be curious as to what does the end to end behind the scenes look like. So take us through all those intricacies.
I mean, being the founder, CEO, and everything else, it is fault. My day is pretty busy. Just things like stock takes, making sure your order numbers and stock number levels are all up, and designing new things, then doing your accounting, your social media, the advertising. I mean, it's a very busy day. It's a bit of everything, but I'm enjoying it. It's, do what you love and you never work a day in your life.
So let's talk about the design. Do you design the actual designs yourself or do you have input? Do you have a team? How's that all working out?
So I design everything myself, but then I have people that help me kind of bring my vision to life.
And how do you go about I mean, I could not wake up tomorrow and start designing. First of all, I'm very bad at drawing. So tell us more about your creative mind. How do you access these creative ideas? What gives you creative inspiration? Maybe where are the places that you find this creative inspiration, especially for the patterns? Because I see some diverse patterns behind you.
Yes, I think it's all like, this is kind of just like sourcing materials and finding what you like and, trying to put a creative spin on sportswear and how it can be used. So one thing I really try and focus on is it not being one dimensional, is, having something that can maybe work for two or three things. Like, for instance, wearing the bodysuit with the blazer and some sneakers and running your errands, or the pair of boots and going out, and, the short sleeve shirts, or let me actually show you.
Yeah, go for it.
Like the short sleeve shirts, putting a blazer over and kind of wearing it to work, and the skirts with a pair of boots and a cute crop top, just doing
Yeah.
something different. Just making it multi like purpose, that you don't only have to use it to play sport.
Yeah, so I love that, and I love the diverse apparel that you have behind you. What are some of the challenges that you face?
Market share, I think I've been using a lot of social media algorithms to kind of get my marketing across to my customers. So I think, just trying to find my market share, the advertising. I mean, I told you I do everything. So I do the photographer, and I put them together, and I find models, which I mostly just use my friends. And I'd say just kind of that has been a huge struggle. I'm learning more and more every day about how the algorithm and social media works. So hopefully we overcoming that one. And then I'd say online sales is a bit tough, being a new brand and people wanting to see the product and feel it and try it on. With an online platform, obviously you don't have that. So I think that has been another struggle. But the pop-ups have definitely been helping. I think people kind of now know their sizes and they know what it feels like, and, can try things on. And then lastly, I'd say finding South African manufacturers that have a great standard of manufacturing. We are obviously limited here in terms of infrastructure on what we can produce.
Do you want to talk a bit more about that? Difficulty in sourcing fabrics in Africa?
Yeah, so we just don't have the variety that, China and the rest of the world has. We have very limited fabric that comes here and that is manufactured, and we just don't have the option of everything. And I think that has just been one of the challenges of manufacturing locally. I mean, I really wanted to be a South African brand. I want to support small businesses, and it's just tough trying to find the people that can do it, but they are, and I have found amazing people to help me create my vision.
And I love the fact that you supporting small business, because I think most small businesses do need that support. The larger conglomerates, they don't really need as much support as what a small business would need. I think that's a good point to have. Talk about the environmental sustainability, because in these production lines, backtrack, because within the yoga space, obviously we're very heavily invested in the environment and nature, because obviously nature is our source and space of healing. We hear about mass production and of that nature. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about how do you ensure that your production line is as sustainable.
I think one thing is, again, I try and make things that are people can use for many activities and not just one-dimensional things. That would, I'd say, be my first one. My second one is I have a lot of limited edition kind of pieces that will only be available once, and once it's sold out, it's done. And we just try and limit the wastage of material, and we try and, make sure we get every piece of fabric,
We use every piece of the fabric.
Yeah, we just want to utilize the fabric properly and make sure there is no large amounts of offcuts, and we make sure that the ratings are perfect and before we just go and, manufacture.
How are you finding it competing with these fashion labels who maybe do compromise on quality, quantity, and also sustainability?
It's tough. It's not easy. I try and, price my products like reasonably. I don't want it to be super expensive, and I want everyone to be able to have access to it. But again, it is tough. I mean, I'm still starting out, so I'm still faced with this challenge and still trying to find my market share and, trying to appeal to the people that do want to support local. And
Well, I definitely enjoyed listening to your journey. And as I said, for me, I think it's such a brave and empowering decision, and that's something that you should never forget. I think your story is just a reminder to all of us that our paths all look different. Least we can do is just support other in anything that one is really doing. Closing out this podcast, is there anything else that you would like viewers to know about you or your brand? Your social media handles, of course.
I just kind of want everyone to know that, go out there and do what you love and don't be afraid of trying anything new, whether it's paddle or golf or starting your own business or, taking a leap and changing, fields of what you do. I mean, I think you really need to put yourself first and your mental health because, again, your mind is your biggest asset and you need to look after it. And yes, take care of yourself.
And I don't think you could have ended off with any words that would have been more fitting and more perfect, other than your mind is your greatest asset. I'm trying to champion that call to action of no mind will be left behind, because I do believe with the right amount of education, resources, community support, and storytelling, because I think it's so important that people hear from people who've been there, what the journey looks like, about what they can expect, because that will only help alleviate these feelings that they may be thinking it's them. It's not. The journey it's like that for everybody else. Our paths, as I say, they just all look different, and it's something that we should embrace. Not meant to all be doing the same thing, or else we wouldn't have amazing products sitting behind you. We wouldn't be listening to this podcast.
And if you think everyone has it figured out, a lot of people don't. You're not alone. Everyone's doing their best, and you should try that too.
Love that you said that. Actually, one of my favorite quotes is, you don't have to have it all figured out to move forward, because I think it's true. I think that other people do have it figured out. Meantime, no one knows what they're doing. And it's something that we should all embrace. Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for sharing your story with the audience. If you want to leave your handles here, I will definitely leave them in the description box. It's up to you.
So you can follow us on social media at Sport SA on Instagram and TikTok. And our website is www.elliesport.com.
Thank you so much for your time today. I think that your story is an inspiring one, and I hope that the listeners will take inspiration and notes from your amazing journey. I'm so looking forward to seeing what more you do. And we're going to discuss yoga apparel, because I see an opportunity there. There is another industry. There can never be enough yoga clothes. Bespoke patterns that you have behind there, something that we'll discuss offline. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to the Lantern podcast, and I'll see you on the next.
Seize the light within yourself with love, the lantern.